As much as I love business and as much as you're watching these and probably think I'm a bit of a nerd, I sometimes do find it quite difficult to read things such as strategies for turbulent times. Because when I get up in the morning or whenever I'm on the move, I just don't have time. I just don't really want to read something that dense. But one thing I did subscribe to and really enjoyed was something called Morning Brew.
Business Insider paid about $75 million for a majority stake in Morning Brew.
So today I'm going to tell you the story of Morning Brew. In 2014, the founder, Alex Lieberman, had a job already at Morgan Stanley and he was going into his final year at university. So what he began doing once he had this job was he started offering interview help for other students who wanted to do the same thing as him. So he did these practice interviews, and one question he always asked was, how do you keep up with what's going on in the business world?
I would dig a little bit deeper. I say, why do you read these things? And the students would say something along the lines of, I read it because that's what my parents told me to do, because it's a prerequisite to say I'm well read in business, but it's dense and it's dry and I don't have enough time in my day to read the journal cover to cover.
So what he did was he started a PDF newsletter called Market Corner. And Market Corner was quite simple. He'd literally just take sort of articles from the FT, from the Wall Street Journal, condense them, give them a bit of a snappier title and just make them a bit shorter and sharp. And a little bit later, a man called Austin Reef reached out and said, I think I have a couple of ideas for your newsletter. So him and Alex partnered up. In 2015, Market Corner became Morning Brew. Austin joined on in 2017 full-time, and at this point there are 100,000 subscribers. By 2018, they reached 1 million subscribers. And in 2020, this had risen to 2 million subscribers. And then in October of 2020, Insider bought a majority stake in Morning Brew for $75 million. So right now they have 9 newsletters focused on everything from HR to the classic Morning Brew. They have podcasts, they have a YouTube channel, they have TikTokers. They just have everything, and it's just absolutely astounding to see their growth and to see how much they've grown since I started subscribing. So that's a little bit of their story, but what makes them so wonderful and why are we talking about them today? The first thing they do really well is they really deeply care about the tone of voice. So Alex's goal with Morning Brew has always been to make it feel like a tastemaker or someone you really highly respect or like or get along with is telling you about business news. Just someone who you really care about and someone who you really like telling you things that you probably should know about. Yeah, and to be honest, if you take any Morning Brew and scan through the headlines or scan through a little paragraph, it's so easily digestible and you can see this point blank.
Morning Brew is a clear, concise, and honestly witty and fun to read newsletter that focuses you on the relevant news in everything from tech to business to what's happening in the world.
When they first started out, they didn't have enough to pay full-time writers. So what they'd often do is they get other college students or freelance writers to send in articles, send in snippets of, condensed articles, and then what they do is they hire one person to purely take all those articles, take all those snippets, and then apply Morning Brew's tone of voice. This person was an incredibly weird mix. They were a business major, they were part of the business clubs, but they were also part of an improv club, which I think tells you a lot about who Morning Brew are and what they're trying to do. Whenever you watch an interview with them, you can clearly tell they are maniacal about this point. They really, really, really want to make it feel like a friend is talking to you more than anything, and their tone of voice is super duper important to them. Fundamentally, business can be a bit boring at times, and it can be quite dense and difficult to read, and I think they really realize that the tone of voice and how business is pitched is just as important as the actual content inside of it.
If you're a startup, you need them. If you're on Twitter, you've seen them. And if you're the Patagonia store at 770 North Point Street in San Francisco, they're probably inside of you right now. Of course, I'm talking about venture capitalists.
They are social media maestros. If you want to know what to do on social media, just top tip, follow Morning Brew. So the first thing is they just tailor it so well to every single channel. If you go on Twitter, you will see fun factoids designed to grab your attention and then a really well thought out article below, or just them capitalizing on trends, or just something really snappy and short to grab your attention, just a killer headline. On TikTok, their content will be just frankly hilarious.
Guessing Where I Am, Company Office Edition. Vacant open space plan void of any human life in the office in Manhattan. Yep, okay, we'll take that. An employee with VR goggles taped to their face. That's Meta. Got it, okay. Kombucha and cold brew on tap. Oh, this is an office from 2011. Yep.
They just really kill the trends. They'll talk about AI, they'll talk about Elon Musk, they'll talk about Jeff Bezos. They don't really care. They'll just put out funny content, and it's not really designed to get you onto Morning Brew necessarily, but it's just there because they have the Morning Brew logo and they're producing killer content and it makes you remember it. I think whenever you see a corporate brand, sometimes you feel like they're trying a bit too hard on social media, or they're trying to make things funny, or they're trying to make things go viral, whereas Morning Brew never, ever, ever feels like that. It just feels like they've said, well, this is brilliant, so we're going to put it out there. They're not trying to, change the world and make everything go viral. They're just thinking, what's the best piece of content we can put out there on social media for that social media channel, and then they go and do it. And then when researching this, another thing that I absolutely loved about them was their real focus on sustainable growth.
Some other media companies decided to raise a lot of funding and push off monetization. We didn't understand that.
So they really said they wanted to just get profitable and stay profitable, which I found really interesting and really refreshing as well in today's sort of landscape of startup culture. So to start off, they got a local fund from Michigan University, and then as part of the early Morning Brew, they started interviewing executives and CEOs at other companies. And then whenever they interviewed the CEOs, at the end of the interview, they would say, hey, look, we're raising funding. Would you like to be involved? Or do you know anyone who would potentially be interested in this? And then through this means, they got 27 investors to raise $750,000, and that is the only bit of investment they have ever received. I mean, it's astounding that they sold their business for $75 million, and that's the only funding they've ever received. And I don't think there's many startups today who can say that comfortably. Then the final thing I think they do really well is they don't take their users for granted, and they ultimately know that providing good content and not expecting much back is the name of the game. So one thing I found super interesting was they actively churn their own users. So people who have stopped opening Morning Brew for a period of time, they send them an email saying, hey, you haven't opened Morning Brew for a while, are you sure you still want to be subscribed? If they email back and they say, yeah, I do, yeah, I'm reading it, I'm just sort of haven't got around to it in a while or whatever, or circumstances have changed, and that's great. But if not, if they don't reply to that email or they say no, they will actively unsubscribe them themselves. They don't seem bothered about the sort of number of users they have on a report or anything like that for an ego boost. They are just genuinely wanting people who like Morning Brew to be subscribed to Morning Brew. And if you don't, they don't take any offense to this. They're just like, great, that's fine. Look, we'll unsubscribe you. Maybe you'll be subscribed in later. I think it's just such a positive approach to users and not trying to box them in, which I often feel like is happening so much with so many subscription things I have in my life. Their referral program is another great example. So if you referred people, or referred like 2 people or something, you would get a mug. Or if you referred 5 people, you would get a t-shirt. And if you referred like 100 people, you'd be able to go to Morning Brew's office. And the whole idea of this is they wanted people who are genuine fans of Morning Brew to share Morning Brew with people they cared about and get some sort of bonus in return. So they knew that it might take a bit longer this way, but the people who are going to be subscribing to it are people who are not just shoveling it to make a bit of money or shoveling it to make a few credits. They are people who are genuine fans and will wear their Morning Brew t-shirt with pride or have their Morning Brew mug with pride. They really work hard to make sure all their users feel valuable. So what they would do is they make sure that they reply to every single email, and they've done this since the very start, and they still actually do this today.
And one of the things we also did throughout the life of Morning Brew is if someone replies to us, we would always write back to them.
They said they got 400 to 500 emails every single day, and they work really hard to make sure they reply to every single one of those. And then the other thing as well they do is they take advertising really seriously. If you ever read a Morning Brew, there's an advertising section, and it just looks like the rest of the sections. I mean, it's quite obvious it's advertising because they clearly disclose it.
An ad in Morning Brew, what you should feel is you should feel like the Morning Brew voice is speaking to you.
Whenever you read it, it still feels like Morning Brew, and they've actually said this is exactly what they want to do. They don't just take advertisers' content and put it in verbatim. They say, look, we're going to take your content, part of the service is we put it into Morning Brew style, so then more people read it, and they say they have about 10 times the engagement on their adverts versus a traditional banner ad. I think just think really carefully about all those little things, and they think really carefully about, okay, will you actually enjoy Morning Brew? Will you actually be a fan of it? Will you actually care about us? And they only want those users, and they're quite happy to say no to everyone else, which is quite a bold thing to do as a startup. I think the thing that they really nail, and the thing that's probably worth thinking about if you want one major takeaway from this video, is their social media, their content, their everything has personality. And if you look at anything or anyone successful on the internet today, they have personality. You know, if you think about the most successful YouTubers, it's people like Casey Neistat, a personality. It's people like Drew Gooden, Danny Gonzalez, Mr. Beast. So there's so many examples of people who are just personalities and being themselves. And, you know, although Morning Brew is made by lots of different people, it feels like you are engaging on every single channel with a personality. And if they can't do that, they actually bring a personality in. So their YouTube channel is Dan Toomey, and you engage with Dan Toomey, who just happens to work for Morning Brew. So you kind of, you know, you get engaged with the personality that way. The best example of how this actually plays out in reality is I watch a channel called Tifo Football. And if you ever watch Tifo Football, it's basically a YouTube channel that breaks down football in a more scientific way. They use animations, their drawings are really good. But they also have this amazing narrator who just has the best voice of all time.
How long until Manchester United are competing for the Premier League title again?
So I've been watching them for a few years, and then a while ago, one day, they changed the narrator. And honestly, I stopped watching. I watched Tifo Football because I enjoyed not only the style in which they did it, but this voice as well was part of that personality. And it's amazing how quickly you can switch off to a media company or someone on YouTube based on the fact their personality changes or their voice changes or they introduce a new person or whatever. It's a really delicate thing to keep that personality to a channel, to a media company or whatever. And it's incredibly hard to do over a long period of time. And that's the absolutely outstanding thing that Morning Brew have done. I'm learning a lot from Morning Brew, and that's what I'm trying to take forward, is that people engage with a person, they engage with good content that's well researched and people put a lot of effort into. And, you know, people empathize with other people, so shouldn't we make all corporate companies feel like that? And maybe that would be a more successful way of looking at social media? I don't know, but food for thought. That's what I think Morning Brew do really well. And I think if you are looking for tips and, you know, takeaways from this video, that's the one. Make sure you have some personality, prioritize content, prioritize your users, and all will be fine.